Hi, I was going to do a quick energy news recap from the last week or so. So there are three main pieces of news that have happened. There's a little bit of context around some of them. So the UK's energy policy is largely trying to meet an objective called Clean Power 2030. So Clean Power 2030 was a key part of the Labour government's manifesto in the election coming up to July 2024. And it really promised to look at things like how for the UK to be more self-sufficient in its energy strategy, really looking at investing in infrastructure, but really the infrastructure of how you generate and supply electricity. As a result of that, GB Energy was set up. So GB Energy is this publicly owned organization which has a certain remit. It's looking at, in particular, things like community energy. So the first piece of news this week is that GB Energy published its local power plans. So that was last week, actually, at this point. And it's made available up to £1 billion of investment for community energy schemes. So what that means is that if you're a local authority or you're part of a mayoral group or you're part of some other group and you want to have community-owned energy within your region, GB Energy is there to support you with doing that. There's a second key piece of news which has come out from the Tony Blair Institute, which is looking at the Clean Power 2030 goals and saying actually they're wrong. So Tony Blair, being previous Labour Party Prime Minister and leader, his institute is saying actually it should be a cheaper power 2030 that we're going for rather than clean power. So to remove the focus on clean and to focus on cheap, but to maintain the net zero objectives by 2050. So we have an objective by 2050 that all carbon emissions have to be we have to be carbon neutral by 2050, which is what net zero essentially means. But Tony Blair is saying, his institute is saying that the way that the focus being on clean power, so clean power being wind, solar and nuclear by their definition, is wrong. We should be focusing on cheap power because there's a wider range of things to focus on rather than just that the energy is clean. So focusing on industrial competitiveness and getting growth in the economy. So that's the second piece of news. So the first piece being local power plans from GB Energy, and the second piece being the Tony Blair Institute coming out and saying we should have a cheap power 2030 objective rather than a clean power 2030 objective, which still supports net zero. And then the third piece of news has just come out today, which is that the boss of Centrica, Chris O'Shea, has come out and said that even with the investment, even with the investment that GB Energy are putting into community owned energy assets and looking at infrastructure building to build new generation, our energy bills are set to rise due to that. So rise to the levels of the energy price spike in which we saw back in 2022, if you remember, when the price of energy bills went crazy and the government had to subsidise all energy bills to the tune of £400 per household and had to borrow £100 billion to do that because energy bills became completely unaffordable. Chris O'Shea has come out today and said that based on the trajectory that we're on, energy bills are set to rise. So that fundamentally undermines the objectives of both Clean Power 2030, Cheap Power 2030, and the Labour Party's manifesto pledge to reduce energy bills by £300. So it's a bit of a mess at the moment, is how I describe our energy policy. It's completely incoherent. Where my position on things in terms of clean power versus cheap power, I believe energy is a trilemma. So what you want is a trade-off between sustainability, affordability and energy security. That's how you typically, as an engineer, you look at energy policy and you say, how does it stack up against the three different areas? So it's not an either or, is my position. I think the Tony Blair Institute actually did a reasonably good job at bringing that to life, because there's a very narrow focus at the minute in Clean Power 2030. There's a lot of good stuff happening. The local power plant from GB Energy is actually a very good move because community energy is a key part of improving resilience in the energy sector and the energy grid. But there's really not enough focus on the cost of energy is my interpretation. So that's why in my PhD, what I'm looking at is how to reform the energy market and to save money basically on energy bills, but also deliver sustainability and deliver energy security. So there's a number of ways that my PhD does that. It's through deep digitalization and removing waste from the energy market. So the reason I want to do that is because it'll save money for households and off their energy bills, so they'll have more money for their discretionary spending just to get by, reduce or improve the cost of living, and also for industrial competitiveness. So we have cheaper energy bills. It means that business profits can be improved, which means that they have more money to invest. So they have more money to invest in jobs. They have more money to invest in the technologies of the future, like AI, and to really improve the economy and improve the luck and the opportunities that there are available for young people, because we can't forget that energy is a key input into the economy. Young people are getting a pretty rubbish deal at the minute in terms of jobs that are available to them. Their roles are being displaced by AI, and people aren't hiring due to the very high taxes and whatnot, and regulatory burdens that exist. So really what I'm trying to do is try to improve the economy for young people by improving the energy market. So just doing one little piece of it. There's other pieces to the puzzle, but that's just a quick introduction to some of the news that's happened this week in energy, and I hope it's useful. Please let me know if there's anything that you want me to talk about that can be useful. I'm really interested to get some feedback. Thank you.